Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. The title to today's program is The Ark and the Ed Davis Story. Is there credible evidence that Noah's Ark does really exist on Mount Ararat or elsewhere? Is there credible evidence that the global flood really did occur? What does the Ark look like? Now, in recent headlines and news items, there have been some indications that perhaps Noah's Ark has been found outside Mount Ararat and outside the nation of Turkey. Well, let's set the record straight. There was a man who saw it in 1943. He was a personal friend of your host. He was a dear friend of Dr. Don Shockey, who's one of my guests today. In fact, my two guests today are some of my very dearest friends, and I want to welcome them. The three of us provide the advanced negotiation team, right?
Absolutely, Dr. B.
Dr. Don Shockey, it's such a joy to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Artist Robert Summers, we've done a lot of things together.
Yes, sir.
Now, the three of us, due to the courtesy of Don, because you are an intrepid and decades-long researcher of Mount Ararat. I've been interested for a lifetime. How many times have you been on Mount Ararat?
Climbed 3 times. Been to Turkey in preparation for a lot of our activities 9 times. But actually on the mountain 3 times. Climbed.
Marvelous.
And the last time with you.
Okay. And you climbed actually to the top of Mount Ararat and went beyond. That's correct?
We had some information that we needed to check out, and so we had to do it. That's the only way we could do it, because they wouldn't allow aircraft there for years and years and years, not to fly anywhere near or over the mountain. So if you got there, you had to climb. So.
You had some information.
Sure did.
And then you called me and said, okay, let's form a team. And Bob Summers was uniquely selected to be on this team because, as one of the world's greatest artists, in fact, in my opinion, he is the world's greatest artist and sculptor. That's a little biased, but I think I have basis for...
I will concur with that 120%, not 100, 120%.
Well, Bob, you've sculpted the Tom Landry. You've sculpted the John Wayne. The John Wayne family selected you to sculpt the likeness of their father. You've sculpted the Byron Nelson. You have painted over 2,000 professional works of art. You have sculpted, I understand, your wife tells me. In fact, I know firsthand. I've seen all of these marvelous pieces. You've sculpted the largest bronze monument in the world.
So far.
So far. the trail drive downtown Dallas. How long is the trail drive?
You know, I'm not really sure. It was scheduled to be 420 feet, but I think it's like 370 or something like that.
Oh, that's Texas size.
Yeah,
that's big enough. And how many pieces do you have in that?
We have 40 so far, steers, 3 horses and riders.
All designed, sculpted by you and synchronized. Don, you said you had some information that led you back. You had been on the mountain before. 9 times you've been in Turkey. In fact, we negotiated a 49-year lease of the mountain.
Yes, we did.
Can you believe that? In fact, this audience may be a little skeptical, but we're going to try to set the record straight. We have the only bona fide lease of that mountain, this triumvirate, the only bona fide lease of Mount Ararat that's ever been let. But it's only as good as the powers that be will permit. And so at the moment, it's a little suicidal to get on the mountain.
A lot suicidal.
Plus, guys, you know, we climbed the mountain in 1990, and you fellas look a little more aged than you did when we climbed the mountain.
16 years ago, yeah.
I use a little more color on my beard now.
Okay. No, I know I haven't aged much, but you men have aged 16 years. No, we all have aged. Now, you said you had some information, and because of that, you selected and then asked me to be co-director, so we selected a vital team, and the 3 of us were the advanced group. What information can you divulge?
Well, it was quite by accident. I was in Truth Consequences, New Mexico, eating enchiladas, and a man by the name of George Stephen and his wife were there doing a project, and he asked me what my hobby was, and nobody should ask me that, because I said, I'm one of those nuts looking to verify Noah's Ark in Turkey. And I proceeded, he said, well, tell me about it. And I proceeded to tell him what difficulty we have getting any help or information and any help from our government. So he says, I can have information on any square foot anywhere in the world within 2 weeks. And I said, George, who are you?
A bit dubious.
And and found out this guy was real. And he said, you have the coordinates? And I said, well, not on the tip of my tongue, but I have all these reports on the area on the mountains where all the stories led us to the northeast area of Mount Ararat. So I gave it to him, and in 2 weeks he called me. And I hadn't told him anything about that. And all of a sudden I said, did you find anything? He's getting this from satellite.
Yes.
He corrected me like it was like 254 miles in space, and I was saying like 248. He said, you're wrong, it's 254.
and that's very important.
And he said there is a man-made object, plural. There are two major man-made objects there on the Abiq-2 glacier, and he said one's a little over 200 feet long, and about 1,000 feet below that is another piece.
Turned out to be the same object, fragmented.
It had fragmented and evidently split. Now, I hadn't told him what we knew about Ed Davis.
Yes.
Because Ed Davis is the first person to allow anybody to know that it was in two major pieces, maybe four. But two major pieces. He said there are two major pieces up there. And he said they're man-made. And I said, I made the mistake of saying, are you sure? And I got lectured. If you got to know George Stephen, because he is specific and
he's precise. He's qualified.
He helped design this information with the government.
Yes.
And he said it's of organic material, and so that we had that information. Now we had a spot, and I went. That was in 1989. I went over and climbed with a couple of Turks. Got some photographs, didn't get on top of it, came back, knowing where to go. We have the photographs that we took, and then we got together with all of us, and I remember our first meeting in Albuquerque, and you met Ed Davis.
Yes.
He's the first verifiable American to have seen Noah's Ark, and that was 1943.
Yes. So, the title of the program, The Ark, Noah's Ark, and the Ed Davis story, to set the record straight. Now, let's take a moment here. This is a photograph taken from Armenian Russia at that time. At about what year, Don?
This particular was in 1984.
This photograph was taken in 1984.
From the Russian side, this is the Ahura Gorge.
This is the Ahura Gorge. Now the site that we're working on, we call it the Shaki site in respect for you, and you say, well, it's
George Stevens.
Sure, it's the art site in this area.
The Ahura Gorge blew out in 1840, about a sixth of the mountain, so it's 1.5 times deeper than anything in Grand Canyon.
Time and a half deeper than anything in the Grand Canyon. Incredible. We examined huge stones. We were taking to an area miles away. Huge stones the size of automobiles had been catapulted out of this from the 1840 eruption. So it shook the mountain, and according to historical sightings prior to that, the Ark was higher, and at this time it began to rumble down the mountain, fragmented into at least 2 fragments, and we'll get more of the story about Ed Davis shortly. And now it may be in 4. And before we get further, time's getting away because we're having fun. Don and Bob, most people have the idea that Noah's Ark looked like this. This is rather cartoonish, and the Noah's Ark looked like a boat with a prow, as we would have in smaller vessels. But Noah's Ark didn't look like that at all.